Well, I think what you see in the final year of Mad Men takes place supposedly in the 1970s, and that's when I was in advertising in New York at Ogilvy and Mather, which is one of the top agencies. And yeah, there are a number of similarities. Then, I mean, when you think about Mad Men, you think about people drinking at lunchtime and having a full bar in their office. And it's certainly true that for many of the advertising executives, when they went out to lunch, they ordered several drinks. My boss always had 2 glasses of Johnny Walker Black for lunch. Didn't seem to bother him. He did just fine in the afternoons. Never had to take a nap. People smoked in the office all the time, and my first job in advertising, I shared an office with my good friend David, and he smoked a lot, and I never really noticed it. But I'm sure anybody walking into our office would, be confronted by a cloud of smoke, something that would be pretty hard for us to handle today. Advertising back then was still, dominated by men, far more so than it is today, where women, I think, really dominate advertising. And one of the things that, although there were some senior female executives, and and advertising was one of the first industries that really embraced women in senior positions, but it was still a work in progress in the 1970s, whereas today women are very senior. One of the things that I get a chuckle out of when I watch Mad Men is how they would present advertising to clients. If you notice when you watch the show, the average meeting or presentation to a client lasts maybe a minute and a half, and it's usually Don Draper sweeping into the room late and presenting to 2 older white males in suits, and he would step over whatever anybody else was saying and just come up with the big idea, and he would present it with no research, and almost with as though he was shooting from the hip. Well, our meetings were very different from that. I mean, usually the account guys, the Pete Campbells, would present the strategy and the research, and then finally the creatives would get up and they would walk through a series of storyboards, and they wouldn't try to act out the scene the way they do sometimes in Mad Men, where 2 of the creatives are almost pretending to be the actors in the TV spot that they're presenting. They would just sort of show the storyboards, and so it was frankly a little more boring and a lot more strategy and a lot less sizzle than what you might have in Mad Men. But it seemed like the campaign ideas in Mad Men came out of Don Draper's brain the night before he was going to present to the client, whereas in reality these campaigns were developed over weeks or months before they would ever be presented to clients. So anyway, it was advertising was very, back in those days. It seemed to me the general feeling was it did have a lot of creative flair to it. It was a fun industry to be in. It could be tough. And if you were in junior positions, it could be a bit of a grind because you had to do all the heavy lifting. But, that was in the golden days of television, where you could come up with big, flashy campaign ideas. They would need to be tested with research. But it was a time when they really valued the big, splashy concept, the sexy campaign. And where brand imagery was, valued more so than a lot of the lead generation work that is used today in advertising. I think with the move to digital advertising, social media, and so forth, it's become much more nitty-gritty. a lot more short term, a lot more tactical, and Frank, for me, it lacks some of the flair and excitement that existed certainly in the workplace, sort of back in the day in the 1970s.